Today we're going to talk about something completely different to building performance, air tightness, insulation consistency. We're going to talk about electrification. And today we're with Matthew Wright. He's a specialist from Pure Electric, where he knows all about batteries, solar, even wind.
I want to congratulate Matthew again and all his team for this extraordinary piece of work. It is very important work. It provides the most comprehensive technical blueprint yet.
We want to talk about today specifically whether our grid can handle electrification of our homes.
Thanks, John. It's a good question. Can the grid cope with the move to electrification? So the big substitution is gases coming out of our homes. This is particularly in the southern states where they're heating climates. So ACT, southern New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, they're the places where gas could be used to heat houses. And then there's the electrification of transport. So at the moment we're importing huge volumes of fuel from Saudi Arabia, from the Middle East, from some of it might make its way to us from Russia, and that's powering our transportation. But what if, we're at 9%, we're heading towards the 9% sales of electric vehicles. What if those sales go like Norway, 95% electric vehicles, and suddenly we're changing the whole transport fleet over to electrification? Can the grid, can the poles and wires, can the generators cope?
So at the moment, what's the percentage of renewable energy on our grid?
Annually, like over the next 12 months, the Australian electricity grids, including West Australia and the Eastern Seaboard grid, are going to run at about 40% renewable energy. So that means 40% of the time you're running your toaster or you're doing whatever you do, use your computer. For me, charging my car, that if I did that from the grid, it would be renewable energy that's powering. That's solar and wind and existing hydro. So the other 60% obviously is going to be fossil fuels, but the equation is that the renewable energy is going up and the fossil fuels is going down.
Yep.
And there's an added factor in that people are, by the tens of thousands, in fact there's 3 million houses already, people are getting solar, and they're now getting big solar systems installed on their roofs. So they're actually now providing power for themselves and an excess to the grid for everybody else to consume.
Which is extremely useful, especially on sunny days, but then on less sunny days?
Well, what's happening now is the systems are getting really big, where someone just rang me and they said, 14 years ago my father got a system, it was 1.5 kilowatts. Why are you suggesting we buy a big system that's, you've got an option here for 10 kilowatts, you've got an option here for 15 kilowatts, why are you suggesting that? Yep. And I said, because we're designing a system that'll work well under most cloudy conditions in winter. Whereas your father's system 14 years ago, that was good for 2/3 of the year, but not doing much at all in winter. So that's why when suddenly the system's 10 times bigger, it's now able to cope with winter. And that's the reality, is that there's 3 times the generation in the peak of summer months than there is in the lows of winter.
But we're also now starting to throw in our cars into that energy mix, right? Off our homes, where we can potentially start leveraging off some sort of a renewable energy system integrated into our homes. Can a home with a 10 kilowatt system sustain and move our cars?
Absolutely. So a car annually, there's no one's average, but there is average fleet statistics. People are driving, they're commuting 40 kilometres round trip per day or whatever, on average. So if an average driver is doing 14,000 kilometres per year or something, they're going to need 2,500 kilowatt hours of electricity to run that vehicle, if it's an electric vehicle, per year. So to get that off a roof in, say, Melbourne, that requires about 3 kilowatts of solar. That'll be skewed towards summer, that 3 kilowatts production. But the point is, if they're actually putting 11 kilowatts of solar in and they're running their house and the car, they'll have enough solar in winter as well to run that car. So people installing, the average right now today is 11 kilowatts. So people are installing enough solar to generate about 11, 12, 13, 14 megawatt hours, or 14,000 kilowatt hours of energy. A car just needs 2,500 to run for the year. And that's the average system going in right now across the country.
So what would happen overnight if we all just decided to get electric cars now?
There would definitely have to be careful management of scheduling of the cars, and we'd burn more fossil fuels in the interim to power those cars, because the renewable energy that's going onto the grid now, most of it is being used. Definitely in the winter months, it's being used. In summer, we are curtailing some. So with scheduled charging during the daytime and so on, we could actually soak up some of that extra renewable energy that's the potential that's not being used right now. But all we'd have to do is install a bunch of renewables over the next 2 or 3 years at a high rate, and that would make up for the requirements for that electric vehicle fleet. We'd look at about 15% more energy demand from the electricity grid to run that electric fleet. Now, it's impossible to electrify tomorrow. We could radically move to electrification of the transport fleet, even at some extreme rate. It's going to take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years to get there. Okay, so it's not going to happen overnight. So it's actually a fairly easy integration. And the thing we've found is that once people buy an electric vehicle, they're obviously not subscribing to all that anti-renewables, anti-EV crap that's out there. Okay, they actually realise that an EV is a comfy car to drive and it's cheap to run. And then they think, oh, I used to time my petrol purchases to, say, Thursday when the price cycle made the prices cheaper. What will I do now to secure my fuel supply, to give me low-cost fuel? They all think, oh, I'll bring forward that idea I've had for a long time to get solar, and I'll put solar on my roof. So the 70 or 80% of Australians who live in detached houses where you can put a solar system on the roof, they'll rush out and they'll get that average 11 kilowatt system, or they'll get a bigger system. They'll put it on the roof, and now they've got enough energy summer and winter that they've prepaid for. They've put that down payment for, they're hedged. No one's going to come and increase their fuel price in the future. They've bought a car for 15 years or 10 years or whatever. They've bought energy for 15 years and the price isn't going to change. They've prepaid it, and now they're effectively, from then on, charging for free.
I mean, what I like about renewable energy as well is that it's made here. When we get oil or when we get petrol, it's always coming from overseas.
And it's causing war and conflicts.
Well, that's right. And then if there was a big conflict that may occur, I mean, we're going to have issues getting oil to this country as well. So it's sort of, it's a lot more stable, and we're actually producing the energy here.
Yeah, Australia's on the arse end of the world. So if there's a supply logistics chain problem, we're the hardest place to get energy and resources to, you know. Now, New Zealand's okay because they're already 90% renewable, right? As a matter of their climate and the fact they've got all that hydro and stuff and some wind. But Australia, if we were dependent on energy that's imported and we aren't radically shifting to electrification of our transport fleet, the place would grind to a halt. So electrification is a serious answer to our energy security requirements, our transport security.
One of the real obstacles for people, especially in inner cities, to get an electric car is just being able to get a charge cable into the car. What's the solution that you've found? Okay,
so there's no approved solutions being rolled out yet in Australia, which is unfortunate. We're not alone though. We have inner city areas that maybe cover 5% or 10% of the population where we don't have off-street parking available. But if you think of Europe or the UK, for example, it's like 70% of houses are in that predicament. So they've already solved this. They've already done the groundwork. They've solved charging crossovers. So for the time being at my place, I've managed to repurpose an old redundant drain and get that refurbished. We can run the cable down to the car. But ultimately, these solutions in the UK are fantastic. They're like a 40mm channel that sits across the footpath. It's bedded in the footpath. It doesn't go all the way through the full depth of the concrete. So there's no interaction with any surfaces or the dirt under the concrete. So we know there's no risk involved. They're cutting the top half of the footpath 40mm deep, and they've got a little lid so they don't provide any trip hazard, no change to the surface. So it's very easy to traffic for someone with a pram or an elderly person or a runner. There's no change to the surface. And it's very easy with those solutions just to lay the cable in, lock it off, and then plug it into your car. In the meantime, I've got this drain pipe that's been repurposed and it works fine until the councils get on board and let me put in a proper charging crossover. This is what we've got. So we can give you a demo of that.
Yeah, let's do that now.
So to transit the footpath, this is a normal electric charger and this is a consumer cable. So some chargers are tethered like this one. That means the consumer cable is connected to the appliance.
So it's a consumer cable with a consumer plug.
Yeah, so it's like an extension lead from Kmart that you pay $4, but this is a specialised one that is designed with a higher rating to charge an electric vehicle.
Now there are clear rules for moving a extension cord over another property.
Yeah, you're not allowed to power your neighbour with an extension cord. You're not allowed to get an extension cord and wire your house with it. You've got to engage an electrician to wire your house, and they've got to use proper fixed wiring that's designed to last a long time installed. But this is a consumer cable. So consumer cables are consumables. I mean, this is expected to last a long time. but it's out in the weather, so it could be that you're replacing these every 10 years or so.
But there's no real rules on how it needs to be run to something in order to be plugged in. Like there's nothing anywhere in our building code, in our construction code. There's nothing.
No, not consumer cables. No.
Plug.
Yeah. So the actual appliance is a hardwired appliance with an isolator that's installed here, and that runs underground 600 mil. And back to the house main switchboard.
Sure.
So that's because that's a fixed appliance. But once you get to the extension cord, that's a consumer cable. My neighbour's got one. Hers is untethered, so she actually she brings her own extension cord and plugs it in.
Okay.
And then takes it to the car. Then she rolls that up and can take it with her and use it at someone else's house or on the road. I just bought the one that's built in, so it hangs out the bottom. So it's a consumer cable. But we're going to run the consumer cable down the pipe. The main key, and I've got a plastic cover if there's any water around, but the main key is always keep your terminals dry. And anybody who's spent money on a charger, which is not cheap, and on an electric car, which is not cheap, or any car's not cheap, they're not going to want to get dirt or water there, because you don't want corrosion on the terminals, either at the car end or the plug end. So we always keep that dry, and I've never ever got a speck of dirt or water on it, and that's how you want to keep it.
Now there's also an RCD in this. There's an RCD back at the board.
So residual current device, so what we used to call safety switches. There's one built into the appliance.
Yes.
And the board has to have one. That's in the wiring regulations today.
And on top of that, I mean, if there's no data getting back to this thing via this cable, it also terminates the charging process.
Yeah, that's right. It's got a comms.
Yeah.
So there's two comms ports, and they're constantly talking to each other.
So if it's somehow vandalised here, then everything just cuts.
Just cuts out. Yeah, that's right. All right, so we're going to just run it down the pipe. So what I do is I push it down most of the way, and then I go to the other end and I pull it through. I've just taken the bung out, and the bung is a rubber bung, and it just stops dirt and leaves and things like that going in there, just to keep it relatively clean. It's not watertight, so moisture does get in there, and then it just drains out. It's got fall on it. It runs downhill because it used to be a drain, so obviously it's higher at my house and lower at the curb. If there is any water around, I've got another plastic sleeve that goes over the top, and that keeps everything dry. With 2 or 3 times a week charging, I don't need to charge on the days it's raining. At the moment, I've got 4.9 kilowatts excess because the other car's on the charge. So that means the 2 of them won't charge at full speed of 50 kilometres per hour. But with this Zappy charging setup, we can choose a priority one if we want to prioritise one over the other. Okay, and we're off. So now we've got 2 cars charging. John's joined us with his electric car. His charging rate has dropped off because I set the Zappy charger ecosystem so that my main charger has priority. But there is an option where I can set it to shared, so we both get 50% of everything available.
So Matthew, some of the big misconceptions with electric cars is that the batteries might only last 100k range, and that's about it.
100,000k, or you need a replacement in 8 years. Now, just because they have an 8-year warranty doesn't mean that's how long the battery lasts. There's a lot of things we buy that have a 1-year warranty.
Yep.
We hope to get 10 years out of them, like our stereo or our Xbox or our PlayStation or something.
Yeah, well, so this is a Model S Tesla, 10 years old now, 250,000 Ks.
Yeah, I've got a 100,000k one. Mine hasn't done as many K as yours. And I had a guy sitting next to me, and he said to me, he goes, "Oh, don't you have to replace the battery at 8 years?" I said, "You're in a car that's 9 years old. We're going on a long trip." And there, see the there says it's got 320k left on the clock, and that wasn't fully charged. He's like, "Oh, okay." And he was from Germany, and he had this misconception. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I haven't had any issues with the battery. I mean, there's obviously reduced range on it, but I mean, it still charges the same. It still goes.
Well, the amazing thing is that your range at 250,000k and my range reduction at 100,000k is about the same. So you've got a real benefit in your one because you get the same degradation as me. We've both lost about 12% of our range since the factory, and that was with old chemistry.
Yeah.
Like today. There's been so much money and so much research and development going into batteries. A new battery today is better than the battery that went into our car.
Yeah, sure.
And our car's one's pretty good.
And then the price of these batteries is also going to go down as well.
Yeah, I just want to point out also a combustion engine car, it's going to get a 5 to 10% reduction in performance as well because people don't maintain them properly. The rings wear, the combustion's not complete. There's oil leaking into the chamber and stuff like that. We're sort of maybe just a tad worse than where an ICE car would be at 100,000k. You're probably better than where an ICE car would be at 250,000k.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yep.
This would enable you to charge during the day from solar, especially if you were charging at night.
So after we've run everything in the house from the solar, after we've charged the cars, we've always got an excess, and that power goes into the power walls. As evening falls, the power walls start to discharge. So I've got 27 kilowatt hours here. When I bought these, the cost of battery storage at the cell level, which is what fundamentally drives the cost of storage, would have been 5 times the price of what it is today.
Wow.
When I bought the car, it would have been 10 times
Wow.
what it is today.
Yeah.
So I bought 27 kilowatt hours at the time, and I see that it'll be commonplace that houses, suburban houses, ordinary houses, would have 100 kilowatt hours of storage installed. If you think of it, the battery density going up, it's probably 4 units like this, but each unit will be rated twice as much. That's what I see the future to hold. That's pretty exciting. This pretty much makes us 99%, and if we wanted to be, we can be autonomous from the grid, but with no behavioural change, we're about 99% decoupled from the grid.
Incredible, especially because I've seen the state of the building envelope here and it's pretty woeful.
Yeah. Well, years ago you did the air pressure test on the house. It didn't come up so well, but it's actually improved since then. The cracks in the floorboards have been Sikaflexed, so they're not a vector of loss. But I've got a plan to get the windows upgraded to double glaze, and at the same time, that's when I'll go through and do the air sealing remediation. Then I'll get through winter, because that's the time when I need 1% of input from the grid is to drive the heating of the house. The car's already rolling storage. There's 2 types of rolling storage. The car's sort of passive rolling storage, in that I can choose to defer charging to a day with more solar during winter. And that means that the car keeps soaking up solar even though winter's challenging, because I only need to charge 2 or 3 times a week. With the heating and the house, we got to heat every day.
Yeah.
So if we can fix the building envelope to a point where the heating input's right down,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter if it's really crappy conditions, cloudy, and I've only got a small amount of solar coming in, I can run this house.
Yeah,
so it all comes down to heating. So heating is actually more challenging than electric vehicles, even though everyone's freaking out about how we're going to charge all these electric cars if imaginarily we went electric cars totally tomorrow.
Okay, so what have you got pumping these things, or what have you got pumping your car? What sort of a solar system have you got here?
It's a 40 kilowatt solar system. So what I've done is, in 2016, I saw the Elon Musk big headline reveal of the Tesla solar roof. I looked at the dollars of it. It was like $150,000 for one that was smaller than mine. So I thought, I can approximate a solar roof, and we all should be approximating solar roofs right now, just by using commodity solar panels.
Yeah, sure.
So I installed a commodity solar panel system, decked out every aspect of my roof, inner city block, not the smallest inner city block, but not the biggest either. And I've managed to get 40 kilowatts on here. And subsequently, since I installed that, the efficiency of solar panels has gone up such that you can do the same thing as me with 8% less roof area.
Wow.
So on an ongoing basis, solar is improving at that rate. Just like lithium-ion battery storage is improving, it's always improving. So where it's actually a good price, it's a good time to buy now, it'll even be better
in the future.
tomorrow.
I mean, one thing that you changed my mind about some time ago was south-facing roofs. Right? Everyone's like, you can't put solar panels on a south-facing roof.
So south-facing roofs in Australia yield the same energy as the ideal roof in Germany, which is also a south-facing roof, because they're the other side. Yeah, we get the same amount of power. So if we just installed all our solar south, we'd get the same amount of power out of every panel as what the Germans get out of their ideal panels. Once we've run out of north roof, run out of east roof and west roof, the next obvious place to go is south. You're getting a little bit less yield, but it's like, some people run the biggest, most profitable gold mine in the world, and other people run a less profitable one, but they still run it. So I've got a very profitable gold mine on the north and a slightly less one on the east and west, and even less so on the south. But that is the amount of solar aperture or roof space I've got. That's my resource. And I'm going to mine the entire resource.
And I guess the next place that we're going to go to then is triangular solar panels, right?
Yeah, they're the missing bits on my roof. I've got all these sections where all the joins are and all the edges, and we need triangles. There's been companies who've done triangles before, but they're currently not imported into Australia.
Right, okay. I guess you'd have to be careful with that, because you need them to output the same voltage as what the square panels are doing.
I think what they do is they pair up 2 triangle panels, and then that kind of gives you the output of one of the other panels. Or you've got individual microinverters or optimizers or some other solution to get around that. So there's solutions to get around everything. The good news is that all this stuff is coming down in price. It's becoming more standard. It's being made at huge volumes. That means it's very supportable. You can get warranty, you can get support. And because the companies are on their 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation of product, they've got lots of feedback from the field, and they're making better products. I think people on single phase connections are fine. They can put solar up to about 20 kilowatts and be economic.
Okay.
They can charge their car at a modest rate. So instead of 50 kilometres an hour, they might be able to charge their car at 35 kilometres an hour. So there's no rush to actually install three-phase power. But if you're going to go bigger than 20 kilowatts, I've gone 40, you're going to need three-phase. If you want to turn your car around faster because you're in the kind of business where you need to charge at 100 kilometres per hour, if it was a 22 kilowatt charger setup, or 50 kilometres an hour if it's like my older Tesla, then you'll need three-phase as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just charging slow as it goes. Remember, cars spend 90% of their life or more parked, okay? So they can be charging at home while they're parked sometime during the day or overnight on wind power, or they can be charging at work. Yeah.
So 100 kilometres an hour charging, we're talking like a 3-hour charge. And for you, you're talking 50 kilometre range.
Mine's
so you're talking
half that,
about,
yeah.
sort of about 6 hours if you want
That's
to get
right.
a full charge.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. I mean, by the morning, you're freshly juiced up, right?
But I plug it in at 9 a.m. When I'm at home.
Yep.
And by the time I want to go somewhere in the afternoon, it's stopped charging.
Yeah.
I just unplug the charger and we're off.
Yep.
And do that again, 4 or 5 days later.
And then you're talking a full charge for your vehicle is going to cost you how much?
It's actually the power. I'm getting paid for my exports to the grid.
Yeah.
So say I was getting paid 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, it's effectively costing me 10 cents a kilowatt hour because I would have been paid for that.
Yeah, of course.
If I want to add 300 kilometres
I'm
over 6 hours,
Yeah.
that's going to cost about, quick back of the envelope here.
Is it $5-6? What is it?
Just give me a second. How many are we doing? 300.
Yeah.
$6. If I'm really desperate, I can forego a coffee,
Yeah, sure.
and that will cover my transport for the week.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people are comparing fast charging costs to charging electric cars compared to putting petrol in a petrol car.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
So-
with my Tesla and your one, we're really lucky. We have, and you can still buy these secondhand if someone's smart, we have free supercharging for life, which is an early promotion. When they brought that promotion on, there was only one supercharger available in Melbourne and a string of them up to Sydney. So they offered this promotion, free supercharging for life, and it's with the life of the vehicle. I can just go down to Moonee Ponds or down to Richmond, which are places I visit, and sit on the supercharger and charge up for free. But I can't be bothered because it's more effort than just plugging in here and paying next to nothing to charge out the front of my home. It's really easy to charge out the front of your home. I've had people criticise me and say, running the charger through the pipe is way worse than go to the petrol station. I mean, get serious. You go to the petrol station, you got to pull in, you got to deal with drips on your Juco. You've got to, walk the door, wait in a queue to pay.
But anyway, I guess the point that I would like to make about that is just that the price at the supercharger is not really a representative price of how the majority of people charge their car.
So the price of the supercharger is probably similar to
Petrol.
to petrol
I think
price.
it's pretty similar to petrol these days, yeah.
But I think if you're charging at home, then you're really charging on special trips. It's going to be 5% or 10% of your driving time. The rest of the time you're paying this dirt cheap price because you've put your solar on and you're prepaid. And what I've found with people who are buying electric cars, once they choose electric cars, like I said this before, they've obviously not against electric cars, they're not against solar, not against renewable energy. They believe that having clean, healthy air is a good thing.
Yeah.
They're all a candidate.
Yeah.
They're all thinking, I'm going to buy solar.
Yeah.
So that's what they do. If they're buying an electric car, they're going to buy solar.
Yeah.
And therefore,
And
they're
it
going
makes
to
sense.
pay their energy up front, and from that day on, it's free.
Yeah.
They might as well charge at home.
Yeah.
Why would they adventure out to pay more when they
Yeah.
can charge cheaply at home?